Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the zoo. The minion with me this evening is Adam.
Hello.
And as it is once again a Friday, and I'm back from my early holiday, I'm the keeper for this evening, Sanguine. How are you doing tonight, Adam?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself, sir?
As we were talking about a bit before stream, could have had a better return to my home, but I've been making the best of it since. So I was telling Adam before stream that when I got back after celebrating the early Christmas with the folks, that I found out that my car was completely dead.
Oh yeah, the fucking frozen battery.
Yep, originally I thought it was just that the cold had caused it to deplete, which that happens if it's cold enough and you aren't using your vehicle enough. Like if you go out of state for a week and aren't driving it, and your state goes to, I think it's been a low of like negative 28 since I've been
Yeesh.
gone. So, yeah, with it dipping down that low, it can drain a battery. So I originally thought that I just needed a jump. I have AAA, called AAA. They said that they would be out in about 2.5 hours from the time that I called them. A good 20 something hours later, still hadn't seen any sign of them.
Oh jeez.
Called to make sure that it hadn't been canceled because it kind of looked like it had. They told me that it hadn't, but that they had stopped sending out trucks for anyone except for emergencies due to the severe weather warning. So, dealt with that, but because I realized that they probably weren't coming in the middle of the night, I quickly ordered a jump box from Amazon. Turns out Amazon drivers still on the road, no problem. So I got the jump box early on, charged it up, went out, tried to jump my car, and that crapped out. Could not start my car with the jump box, which let me know that it wasn't just the battery was depleted, the battery was completely shot to shit.
Oh jeez.
So once I found that out, called AAA again and went, hey, rather than a jump, I now need to have you send out someone to swap batteries for me. And it took some time going, yes, I realize that you aren't going to send them out right now, considering I'm 28 hours into a 2-hour wait. But I'm just trying to make it so that when you do send one out, they're sent out with the right information, and I don't have them come out and go, well, looks like you need a new battery. We'll send someone out when we can and have to wait another few days in order for that to happen. But the good news is that I was able to figure out that it is a battery issue. It's only my starter battery. It's not my main battery because I have a hybrid. So it has a main battery and then it has a starter battery. The starter battery is shot to shit. The main battery's still good because with the jumper box, I was able to get enough power to the car that I was able to see the current battery power for my main battery. And my main battery was at like 75%. So yeah, I'm looking at probably a $100 fix rather than if it was the main battery, I'd be looking at a several $100 fix.
Holy shit.
But now that I've gone through my woes, unless you want me to jump straight into talking about the bright side with my dinner, do you want to talk about your day and then do the dinner after?
Well, I mean, I don't think my day was as eventful, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. Certainly nothing to bring to the table, as opposed to major car accidents and repair work. But I will say that I did purchase some very fine marijuana, and it's very tasty and effective. So happy holidays for me. Um, that's my
Nice.
own personal Christmas gift.
Mm-hmm.
But also, yeah, I really want to watch Die Hard for some reason. It's
It
sitting
isn't
at.
Christmas until I see Hans Gruber fall from the top of Nakatomi Plaza.
It, yeah, it's like you didn't put the star at the top of the Christmas tree just yet.
Yeah.
So we'll see
It's
how
just
that
like
goes.
how is it really New Year's Eve if you don't watch a ball drop?
I don't know. Oh shit, actually, there was a news article that I read where somebody had called in for like lewd content out on display in front of somebody's house. And so the cops go out there and investigate, and it's a mannequin dressed like Uncle Eddie from Christmas Vacation
Mm-hmm.
when he's dumping um, the sewage or the refuge
Mm-hmm.
uh, into the sewer. And and the owner was like, yeah, I figured everybody has an Uncle Eddie, so this was our Christmas decoration, was
Mm-hmm.
a mannequin of Uncle Eddie uh, doing his thing.
And they called it in as lewd. That's kind of funny.
Well, I think some neighbors saw it and they didn't know what it was, so they called it in. Like,
Clearly, they aren't cultured.
how do you not know Christmas Vacation?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no. Anyways, yeah, no. So it's hey, I'm on vacation, so I'm just pretty much just brain dead. Um, I set up my
Enjoying your time off.
yeah. I set up my PS4, and I forgot the last time I actually really played it was when I was hanging out with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Quiz, because I think Quiz brought over the Guilty Gear, so I had to save stuff for
Yep.
that.
And I learned how to finger people's assholes as
Oh
Faust.
yeah, with that weird, that weird character.
Yeah, Faust.
um,
Giant German doctor with a bag on his head that has a penchant for shoving his fingers up someone's ass.
see, it was like a time capsule,
Yeah,
with an unfortunate result.
a giant German proctologist.
Unforeseen colonoscopy. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Um, but yeah, but I've I've been hanging out, just enjoying doing this stuff, because otherwise, you know how it is. You're in the Midwest. We're experiencing, what are they calling it? Cyclone bomb or some shit.
It's the Arctic cyclone bomb, I think is the full phrasing.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah. It's cold as
the
shit
cold,
outside.
yeah, the cold doesn't bother me at all. It killing my car battery annoys the shit out of me.
It didn't bother you, but it bothered the car battery.
Oh yeah. In fact, it doesn't bother me to the point where my balcony door is currently open. so that I can cool off.
Ooh.
Yep, currently have
You
that open, just relaxing in my apartment as per usual, with the door open to -5 degrees.
you know, when I was walking around, it wasn't so much that it was cold, it was just windy as shit.
Oh yeah, that wind cuts straight through you like a fucking knife.
Yeah. I mean, that's where it hits you, because
Yep.
I'm sitting there walking, I'm like, holy shit. Um,
And good evening, Kiva and Adamantine. Just to toss that out real quick. Continue on, Adam.
well, as I was trudging through the wind, the cold, blistering, blustery wind, uh, it was just cutting straight to the bone when it was unbelievable. And here I thought if I shoved my fat mouth with a bunch of cheeseburgers and gain a bunch of weight, I'd figured I'd be able to wrestle through this cold winter, but alas, it was to
Yeah,
no avail.
that's the thing. A lot of people like to say, well, yeah, bigger guys, better insulated.
Yeah,
There's
it
a
doesn't
little
work.
bit of that, but it doesn't work all that well.
It was a lie. The goggles, they do nothing.
Yeah. Because do you know where the vast majority of your body temperature comes from?
uh, my center?
Intravascular friction. Sorry, intravascular friction. It's your blood bumping up against your blood vessels, creating friction, and that friction warms most of your body.
Oh.
Yeah. You can get additional heat from other things, like, of course, muscle contractions generate a bit of heat, but other than shivering, most of the time your muscle contractions aren't sufficient in order to appreciably shift your body temperature, or unless you're really working out hard. If you're working out ridiculously hard, then yeah, your body can reach a point where the muscle contractions are contributing a large part of your body heat. But yeah, normally it is the friction of your blood cells through your blood vessels.
Oh, blood cell to blood vessel. Uh,
That's why people with anemia get cold very easily, because they don't have as much blood in their blood. So it's closer to being like water, which means that it doesn't generate anywhere near as much friction.
hmm.
But shall I mention what my dinner is for the night? I know I told
Yes.
you, but I haven't told the rest of chat. So, because of my car woes, I wasn't able to go out and do my grocery shopping yesterday as I intended. So I poked my head into my freezer to see what I had left it for myself. And I was able to find some chicken thighs. So I made chicken thigh and shoyu. Well, chicken thigh on Sakura shoyu butter rice, which is fantastic, and got to use one of my new bit of kitchen gadgets from Christmas. I got a absolutely fucking amazing rice cooker. It's one of the
Okay.
Zojiroshi with the fuzzy logic. And as good as my rice was, cooking it the way that I was cooking it before, the Zojiroshi just makes it that much fucking better. It is amazing. So I did Sakura shoyu butter rice with chicken thighs. Then I did some white peach sake, a bottle of Sapporo, and then some Kaigan Japanese whiskey. So a very, very tasty dinner. But other than that, have you heard any big news? Anything that's piqued your interest that you want to dive into, or shall I go into one of the topics that I've heard? Adam? He muted himself shortly before I asked this question. I think he was anticipating that the food talk would take a little bit longer.
Yeah, sorry. I thought it was going to be a bigger meal. Usually it is a bigger meal, but
Yes, today it was kept fairly simple because it was a bit of a oh shit, I don't have groceries.
ooh. Um. Well, wait. You had topics that you because okay. Look. Um. Today I pretty much just focused on what I had to get done since I had the day off.
Mm-hmm.
Um. And then um. Yeah. Pretty much. I stayed out of the news area. I've been pretty much just playing around with trying to get this stuff to stream, two different
Mm-hmm.
systems to stream, so I can play around with the different um, game systems during stream time. Um, and of course, I'm looking forward to watching some Die Hard. But
Like I
it's
said before stream, it isn't Christmas until you see Hans Gruber fall from the top of Nakatomi Plaza.
ho ho ho.
Yeah.
So I mean, um, that's pretty much my day. I did have some chicken soup, so that was pretty cool.
Nice.
It wasn't as nice as what you made, but yeah.
Oh, most of my big meals were while I was back home for the bit of time that I was. Because, of course, we had the early Christmas dinner, and my family observes a rather traditional Christmas feast of roast goose.
Roast goose.
Roast goose, which not many people have had it nowadays. It is absolutely amazing, though. It is Christmas dinner to me, and I'm somewhat bigoted in my view of holidays because to me, every holiday needs to have its own holiday feast. So it drives me crazy that so many people end up doubling up holiday meals where they'll have Christmas gets turkey. Well, turkey was already Thanksgiving. Why the fuck would you have turkey for Christmas when you had turkey for Thanksgiving? Now, if you live outside of the United States, this isn't a problem. But if you're living in the United States, why are you doubling up? You're washing away some of the uniqueness of the holiday by doing that, in my opinion.
Well, doesn't that go in line with isn't there that old song where it's like Christmas is coming, the goose is getting fat?
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, there's substance there.
Oh, yeah. It is the traditional European Christmas meal is goose. Not all of Europe, but a good chunk of Europe.
Yeah,
Which is
big old
why,
fat goose.
yeah, which is why in the Christmas Carol, it isn't how much is that fat goose in the window? Is it still selling? No, no, no. It's, oh, sorry. How much is that fat turkey in the window? Is it still selling? It's how much is that fat goose in the window? Is it still selling? Because that was the traditional meal, and it was the same in the Blue Carbuncle. In the Blue Carbuncle, one of the Sherlock Holmes investigations, it's a goose that is the center point of the theft of the Blue Carbuncle. So goose
So
is
hold on,
extremely
hold on,
traditional.
hold on. So do you think with the increase in homelessness that we may see an increase in the goose population dwindling?
No, because nowadays for some weird reason, well, I actually know the reason why. If you would like, I can explain why goose fell out of vogue for holiday meals. But goose has fallen out of favor. Even in Scotland, apparently, it is not the go-to meal anymore. Even though throughout the whole of the UK, goose was the traditional Christmas meal. That's why it's in all the literature as being the traditional meal. In most of Europe, it was the traditional meal. I think it was the traditional meal in Germany and in France, for instance. But it fell out of use because rich people wanted to be different. And the people that were no longer as poor wanted to be more like rich people. So what happened was when England had its New World colonies, and when all of Europe had its New World colonies, one moment, just took a bite of candy.
Yo, what kind of candy?
Sour apple gummies, which proved to be a little bit chewier than I was expecting.
Yeah, dude, you enjoying some gummies?
Yep. So it was when most of Europe had its New World colonies. Turkey is indigenous to the New World. So it was more expensive to offer turkey, which had to be imported from the New World. And thus it became much more appealing to the wealthy because wealthy people are constantly looking at silly reasons to burn money. So they started importing the turkeys, use that as their Christmas dinner. Then, as more people started to work their way out of poverty and into the middle class and then the upper middle class, it became a thing that you would have people that were previously unable to afford turkey start buying turkeys. So turkey became more and more popular because more people were trying to act like the hotty toddy, the hoi polloi, and get turkey instead of goose, even though goose has a much better taste than turkey. Just to be completely blunt, goose has much more flavor. Turkey's delicious. Goose has more flavor. The problem with turkey is a lot of people overcook the ever-living shit out of turkey, which is why you get people that will say things like, turkey tastes like it's never had a glass of water in its life.
Oh, so it's like dry.
Oh, yeah. When people cook turkey poorly, it becomes dry as all hell. And that's true with any meat. If you overcook it, it becomes dry as all hell, which is why I refer to well-done steak as boot leather.
Sorry. So, what do you plan on cooking for Christmas time?
Well, I already had my Christmas feast, which was roast goose, fresh baked bread, a absolutely beautiful bit of mash, and then I did a saute of mushrooms, onions, and Brussels sprouts with a goose gravy. And that was my holiday feast. Then the dessert was an apple crumble with some really good French vanilla ice cream. Or actually, it was a homestyle vanilla ice cream rather than a French vanilla. But yeah, that was my holiday feast, and it was fantastic. The day before, I had mini beef Wellingtons as well as a standing rib roast.
So, what are you going to cook for Sunday?
It'll be whatever I have available that day because I am not actually doing anything for Christmas since I work that night. So,
Oh, so you're going to be at work?
yep, I'll be at work. So I'll be making. I was able to find some sausages in my freezer as well as the chicken thighs. So I'll probably be cooking up some of the sausages, and depending on which sort I use, it'll either be sausages with some sort of pasta or sausages done up in a tortilla wrap with mushrooms, onions, and peppers.
Hmm.
But yeah, it should be a decent time. The one thing that I do have is I got at least one Christmas present that was sent to me rather than sent to the family home that I have to unwrap when it comes to Christmas proper. So I'll be unwrapping that either before I go to sleep or after I wake up and calling my family and letting them know how I feel about it.
Oh, that's good.
Yep. Though I do have a fair guess what it would be because it's a package that is labeled as heavyweight, but it is light enough that I picked it up and carried it in while I was carrying it all my luggage from my trip. So I think it's probably a about 25-pound weighted blanket.
Ooh. Weighted blankets.
Yep. Which
That's supposed to help you fall asleep fall
yep.
asleep faster, right?
Yep, it's supposed to help you fall asleep faster and help you stay asleep. Which I'm looking forward to if that does actually work. So
Yeah, you gotta
I'm
let me
going
know.
to enjoy if that does work out. And I will definitely let you know if it is that and if it does work out as it is being sold, it does.
Then we
But
get a
other
new
than
sponsor.
but other than that, there's of course the big shit going on in the news, which is not as cheery as talking about food and holidays, because there's been
Oof.
the Twitter files that have continued to drop, and the result from the Fed when it comes to what they've done. And
Well,
the
I don't know. I mean, in all honesty, their response was pretty sound. They they pretty much said that neener, everything you guys are saying is untrue, and you're all conspiracy theorists.
yeah, it was very much a fuck you. Why are you complaining?
Yep.
Rather than actually responding to any of the claims. Though there was the result of the one guy who was former FBI that started working for Twitter and started trying to cause a bunch of issues when it came to releasing the documents. There was a bit of condemnation for him and his actions,
Hmm.
but it was condemnation done very carefully, such that it wouldn't reflect poorly upon the FBI as well.
Right. Yes.
Which is particularly infuriating. But absolutely predictable.
What I can understand is the people that see this and then still try and make excuses for it. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
dude, at what end are you just gonna like? It's a corrupt fucking organization. Like, holy
Mm-hmm.
shit.
Yeah, it's the problem that we had before with the precursors to the FBI and the precursor to the CIA. And I think it's time to do what was done with those. Where do you know
Disband.
what happened to the precursor to the CIA?
Yeah, they fucking scatter them to the wind.
Well, no. That was the idea behind what they were going to do. What happened to the precursor to the CIA, which was the OSS,
Oh yeah.
the Office of Strategic Services. What happened is that you had the OSS get dissolved and the CIA get formed. The problem is when they dissolved the OSS, the way that they dissolved it was they went, the OSS will no longer function as the OSS, but we'll hire a bunch of the same fucks that we just had in the OSS
They just put
into
them.
the CIA.
Yep.
And they didn't do it in a clever or thoughtful way, because a clever way of doing that would have been, okay, we had problems with the management of the OSS and what the management was ordering. So let's not allow the management to continue on, and let's review all of the people and what they did when it comes to the actual agents. And if the agents have good paperwork and if everyone is above board with that, then we'll allow them to get a job as the part of the CIA. But if their paperwork and their case history is at all questionable, then fuck you, you're out. And if you're management, you're just out. No. What they did was they went, we're closing down the OSS. And if you were part of the OSS, we're going to allow you to become part of the CIA. Almost 100% of the time, we're going to allow you to become part of the CIA. Your management for the OSS, we're the one that okayed the fucked up things that we don't like the OSS for doing. Well, congratulations, you're now part of the CIA, which is why you have certain projects, the most infamous of the certain projects when it comes to the OSS is, of course, when you're talking about, well, let me just see, because Adam, I know you're going to answer this correctly when I ask you.
Oh, well, hold on. Why do you got to put that much pressure on me?
What was one of the most fucked up things that the CIA has ever done?
uh, why do you
I'll
got to
give
put
you
so
a
much
hint.
pressure on me?
I'll give you a hint. Whitey Bulger and Kaczynski.
Well, okay, that would qualify. Um, I mean,
MK Ultra, right?
considering what happened with the recent releases of the JFK files, I would say that could also be uh, qualifier. But I mean, the CIA has been pulling some bullshit for quite some time.
Yep. But yeah, MK Ultra is often cited as the most fucked up thing that the CIA did.
Oh, MK Ultra. You want to go into MK Ultra? Want to go down to that rabbit hole? Hey, speaking of rabbit holes, you want to talk about acid and fucking mind control and
Yep.
shit like that? Let's go, dude. How?
MK Ultra
Is that where we're
started
going?
with
Okay, let me get
MK Ultra
my tinfoil
started
hat.
under OSS.
Yes, let's go on a bicycle
And
ride.
it continued under the CIA because what happened was the OSS got shit canned for doing fucked up things, and rather than removing the people that did fucked up things from the OSS and not allowing them to become part of the CIA, what
And the
happened is
OSS was an offshoot of fucking a British uh intelligence agency. So I mean,
the
this is going
OSS
all the way back
was
from
the OSS
Britannia.
was the one of the groups that ended up being split off of the OIC, the office of the no, it's not OIC, it's OIC was a different because you had the office of the or is the office of the inspector something, I can't remember what the C was. But then you had the office of the coordinator of information, OCI.
Mm-hmm.
OCI became OSS and OWI. I think it was OWI because it was the Office of War Information or War Intelligence, and it was the Office of Strategic Services, split off from the Office of the Coordinator of Information. And the reason why those two were made is because they went, hey, the Office of the Coordinator of Information is doing some weird fucked up shit. Let's decrease their power. So they split it, and they hired up all the people that were part of the Office of the Coordinator of Information into the OSS and the OWI. Then, after a while, they went, hey, these two groups full of a bunch of people that we knew were doing fucked up things, so we decided that they needed to be given less power, are still doing fucked up things. Let's dissolve them and make a new group. How are we going to staff this new group? How about we fill it with all the people that were doing fucked up things before? Surely this will teach them not to do fucked up things. No, when you just keep on bumping them to a different office that has a different name but does the same shit, it doesn't improve by any stretch of the imagination. They just keep on doing the same fucking shit. It's infuriating because what should have happened and what should happen now is that they should look at the CIA and the FBI and they should shit can the vast majority of the people. And then when they refound a new group, because we do need a agency that looks over shit like the FBI does. We don't need it to do what the FBI does, but we need it to do some of the same things. Does that make sense? We need a federal investigative body, effectively, is what I'm saying.
Yes. That makes
We just
sense.
need it to not do the shit that the FBI is doing. So what should be done is the FBI should be dissolved. A new agency that is the federal investigative body should be formed. Anyone that was part of the FBI in the upper management, shit canned. They are blacklisted from ever working at the new body. Anyone that was part of the ethics department, shit canned, blacklisted from ever working for the new body. Anyone who was in the hiring, shit canned, blacklisted from the new body. Individual agents, let's look at all your casework. If you withhold anything from us, shit canned, blacklisted from the new body. If you give us your entire history and we look at your history and we go, no, this agent was doing valuable work. Like if you were one of the agents that was in charge of doing national chomo ring stings and all your paperwork was above board, all the shit that you did was quality work, then welcome aboard. You get to be part of the new agency. If You were one of the people that was involved in the Whitmer kidnapping shit where it was a group of 14 people, 11 of them were fucking feds. Shit canned, blacklisted from ever working for the new agency. If
I think I
you're,
can go with that, you know?
yeah,
I mean, it's. Look, you obviously ran some bullfuckery. We can't
yep,
trust you. You know,
yep,
what the fuck do we need you here for? So, yeah, no, you're gone.
yep.
I
And
mean,
it,
we can discuss maybe jail time later, but for the for the first bit, yeah, you're no longer allowed in civic duty, and
mm-hmm,
yeah, get the fuck out.
yeah, it's just infuriating because we have so much shit that should be obvious. It should be that if you've been involved in a scheme to kidnap where the vast majority of the people that were part of that scheme were actually feds, then fuck you.
Well, because at that point, you're trying to trap people to do something.
Yep,
And again, hey, let's not forget that this isn't the first time that they did this. You know,
yep.
like, hey, Ruby Ridge. Hey, you know, like, let's
Which, do you know
look.
what happened to the sniper who was responsible for Ruby Ridge? Do you know what major event he was also part of?
Yep.
What major event? Let's see if you get the right one off the top of your head.
No, you go ahead and say it.
Waco.
It's disgusting. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's
Yeah. For
and
those of
and
you who
and
don't
look,
know, the
and
sniper.
there's still people out there who are gonna sit there and say, yeah, but you know what? The FBI, they're just, they're our government good guy people. It's like, dude, are you after this shit? All right, hey,
Yeah, it's absolutely infuriating because for those who don't know, like I said, the sniper who is responsible for the shit that happened at Ruby Ridge, yeah, his next big incident that he dealt with was Waco. And he did the same shit there. He didn't lose his job. He didn't get shit canned. No, he got to keep his position. And not only did he get to keep his position, he was given a second bite at the apple and he fucked that up as well. And then do you know what happened after that? Was the guy who did two colossal fuck ups twice in a row shit canned after that? No, he was still an employee of the Fed. Like I said, what needs to happen is that the Fed needs to be dissolved, a new agency put in its place because we need an agency that is the federal investigation
yeah, no,
body.
there was a good intentions at the interim,
Yep,
but it it got corrupt. Like, let's
yep,
be realistic. It's corrupted.
yep,
Oh shit, they're coming for you, man.
yep. Yeah, it absolutely became ridiculously corrupt and infuriating because it didn't need to go that way. And it would have been very easy to keep it from going that way. Just people were feckless. That's really what it comes down to.
Feckless. That's a good term.
Yep. But yeah, it's just infuriating because it should be something that is obvious to anyone. It should be that when you're dealing with one agency that does fucked up shit and you're trying to get a new agency, that you make sure that you don't hire the people that did fucked up shit the previous time. That should be a no fucking brainer, but for some reason that is a difficult task for the federal government.
Well, that's one aspect, but I'm on the aspect of for the layman who is presented with this information and still goes about and says, you know what, but the FBI, they're the good guys. Like I said, you, these people, I don't know. I don't think there's anything we can do with them. They're going to believe whatever the fuck is fed to them. And shit, like,
I don't think that it's
are they a
impossible to.
lost cause or
I
shit?
don't think they're a lost cause. I think everyone does have a point where they will go, okay, yeah, this shit has gone too far. The question is, what's that point? And the problem is, right now, we have everything ginned up to the point where fucking everyone seems to have the, well, as long as it's being done to the right people, I don't care. And that is fucked up because it goes back to the old thing of freedom of speech is not when you think that people should be able to say what you agree with. Freedom of speech is when you think that people that you absolutely disagree with and you do so vehemently have the right to say things that you abhor. And when
Hey, it's
you
not my
think that,
whore. Oh,
that's when you're actually for freedom of speech. If you're just saying, no, people should be able to say what I think they should say, that's not freedom of speech. That's just you want people to say what you say.
but
Fucking
that's the easiest of the scratch off to get to find out who is actually uh, standing by their morals. Because yeah, you should be able to say whatever the fuck you want to say without, you know, oh, well, I have to temper what I say because otherwise something and such might happen. Like that's not freedom of speech then. That that really
no.
isn't. You should be able to say it. And when people say, well, there's consequences of what you say because of what you say, it's well, no. You have to be able to control yourself. And somebody saying something that you don't like, that's on you to fucking not react to it. Like, holy shit. It's not difficult. This is shit that fucking children understand. I don't I don't know. We are at a time.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's because you have, again, people that are perfectly content to watch their opposition have rights denied to them. But that isn't fucking healthy. That isn't how we should be doing shit. But that's what we keep on doing. We keep on having people that have the view of as long as it's happening to the right people. And sadly, the only way that they will ever realize that something fucked up is happening as if it happens to someone that they don't want it to have happen to. Like, look at the number of... Do you remember a few years ago when there were the stories about universities considering, not even implementing, but considering using the same affirmative action shit that they've used for every other group for men? And the absolute shit fit that people had over that?
No.
So a few years ago, when it became the case that there were more women in universities than there were men, a few schools started talking about potentially increasing the number of males in the university. Because we kept on being told that it was about having proper representation, right?
Mm-hmm.
That the ideal setup would be 50% male, 50% female, a little bit more female because females are a little bit more than 50%, but roughly 50-50. And that's what they kept saying was all that they were after. It was that 50-50 split. And then it became that women were overwhelmingly outnumbering the men. And when that happened, there were a bunch of feminists crowing about, see, we told you women were better than men. We're now overrepresented in universities. Not realizing that the reason why is because they had their numbers artificially increased by decreased standards. But a bunch of schools started going, hey, we need to actually consider doing affirmative action for male students because they're being underrepresented. And every school that came forward and even said that they need to start considering that got absolutely fucking blasted.
Ooh.
Because how dare you say that you need to make it so that you allow more men into school? That isn't in the name of equality. No. Equality means fewer men, more women. So you can't say that because women now outnumber men that you need to increase the rate of male enrollment, because fuck you, that isn't feminist of you. The only time that they thought there was a problem with it is when it would have impacted them, when it would have affected them, that they were going to be hit by it, that the women were going to have the tables turn on them, and that they were going to be held to a higher standard. That's when they went, no, this is fucked up. You can't have this. You can't have it where they are held to a lower standard and we're held to a higher standard. That would decrease the number of women and it would artificially increase the number of men. That isn't right. No shit. It's never right to decrease the standard for one group and raise the standard for another. And it's never right for a reason that most people don't fucking think of. And it pisses me off because when you look at the dropout rate in university, do you know the groups that have the highest dropout rates?
I don't think I could give you an accurate
Black women, black men, Hispanic women, Hispanic men.
Okay. Well,
then
I
white
was gonna
women,
say Eskimo,
white women, Asian women, white men, Asian men, in order.
In that
from
order.
from the most likely to drop out to the least likely to drop out. That order. And it's really easy to understand why when you actually think about it for half a moment.
Hey, real quick, just so that we're not going to be kind of a yokel type of thing, but there is a way you can get these stats, right?
Oh, yeah, you can look them up in the college attrition rate stats.
Okay.
You can search them up, and it is in that order the attrition rates. And the reason is very fucking simple. What happens when you decrease the standard for someone? Well, raising the standard for others is that the people that have had the standard raised know that they belong. The people that have the standards lowered can never know if they actually belong. Let me explain it this way. Think of a foot race, Adam. So everyone understands a foot race.
Well, hold on,
First
hold on. I'm
person.
thinking of a foot race. Immediately, marathon comes to mind. Only
Yep,
because,
you can think of the
haha,
marathon.
I know, yeah, Adam's a goofy guy and he likes his history stuff. But you could
Yep.
also do like a foot race with like Charlie Brown, and
Yep.
he's running around. Okay, I'm
So
sorry.
a
Go ahead.
marathon is very easy to understand. The first person to cross the finish line wins, right?
Yes.
And everyone's running the same distance, so it makes it so that everyone's competing on an equal playing field because they're running the same distance over the same track. Makes sense. Everyone understands this, and everyone sees the equality of it. But let's change this. So let's make this more commensurate with college applications currently. So let's say that you, I, and Cryptic are all running this race. But then you hear that rather than all of us running this race at the same time so that we can see how we stack up against everyone else, instead, we're running it at different times. Well, that can still work. We're being independently timed, so we'll still be able to judge our times based off that, right? Sounds decent. Bit weird that we aren't running at the same time, but okay, I can understand that. But then
Yeah.
you're told that you won't be allowed to hear the times for Cryptic and I. That's a bit strange. But as long as you're using the objective times, that's perfectly fine. It still works. It's just a little bit strange that you don't get to hear what Cryptic's time was or what my time was. And then let's say that it goes a step further. So they go, hey, Adam, because you're of this group or that group, rather than you running a full marathon, you're going to run a 3/4 marathon.
Mm.
The other two are going to run at least a marathon. They might run a bit more than a marathon, but they'll run at least a marathon. You're going to run a 3/4 marathon. Now suddenly you're going, hold on a second, I'm running a shorter race. This is stacking it in my favor. And not only am I running a shorter race, but they just said that the other two might be running a longer race. That's kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it is kind of fucked up.
they don't stop there because the next thing that they say is, and also because you're part of this group or that group, we're going to subtract time from your end time.
So wait, they're even taking your time?
They're clocking your time on the race and then they're subtracting time from that. So they're making it so that your time is quicker.
Holy shit.
And what they're also going to do is at best, Cryptic and I would have our time as it is, but they are admitting that there's a chance that they'll add time to Cryptic and my time in that foot race.
Dude, I mean, as long as Cryptic is there.
So
I mean, he does seem like a good guy, so.
what happens currently is now, just to run through everything, you're running a 3-quarter marathon.
All right.
You don't get to see how quickly Cryptic and I are running our races, but we're each running at least a full marathon, potentially more. You're having time subtracted from your end time, making it so that your end time is quicker. And Cryptic and I are most likely having time added to our end time, making our time slower. And then they come up to you and they say, oh, and one more thing. Because you're part of this demographic, you aren't going to have leg weights during your
Wait,
run.
I'm not gonna have, or
You're
I'm
not
going,
going to have leg weights.
Oh, did I have them before?
This is the first time that you're hearing that there's leg weights at all, even in the cards.
Well, yeah.
You're being
Wait, hold on.
told-
Are we playing Dungeons and Dragons? Do I need to have a dice?
You're being told that you aren't getting leg weights. So the implication is that if Cryptic and I aren't part of that demographic, that we would have leg weights, right?
Is Cryptic in the room?
Cryptic is not currently in the chat, but he's in the example. So now this race goes off. And you run the race as fast as you can. Let's work through the possible outcomes. So, outcome number 1, you finish the race and you're told you win.
Hmm.
Do you actually feel like you won?
Not really.
Yeah,
I
because
don't know. I kind of feel hollow inside. Like it was something like
it was almost
I
like a
finished an
foregone
event.
conclusion, right?
Well,
Because
no, I
all the
finished an
cards were
event.
stacked in your favor.
Well, I finished an event, but all of a sudden, what was what was supposed to be accomplished out of it? You
It
know?
was to determine who was the fastest.
Yeah. A hollow
But
truth.
what they did was they then changed all the rules, making it so that if you won, you can never know whether or not you would have won otherwise. Because you don't know how much time was subtracted from your end time. You don't know how long our races were. You don't know how much time it took us to run our races. You know how much time it took you to run your race. You don't know whether we had leg weights. You know that you didn't.
Yeah. Well, I was surprised for the leg weights.
Yep.
Leg weights.
So what the end result is that if you win, you can never know that you actually won. Let's go for the opposite part of this, though. So that was one outcome. You win the race. Another outcome is you lose the race. How do you feel after being told that you lose the race when every part of the race, everything that you were told, is that you had the advantage? You feel like shit now, don't you? Because you couldn't even win the race with every single advantage. With the deck stacked in your favor, you still fucking lost.
I mean, I'd feel disappointed, yeah.
So what has happened is that in this example, every victory has been made hollow And every defeat has been made fucking crushing. Now let's say that rather than you getting every advantage in this race, let's say that you were told that rather than running a standard marathon, you were running 1.5 times a standard marathon. And rather than having time subtracted from your end time, you had time added to your end time. And rather than being able to run without leg weights, you had fucking leg weights strapped to you. Now, if you win the race, you're the biggest fucking stud alive because, god damn it, you won the race when you were running 1.5 times a fucking marathon and everyone else was running less than that. And not only were you running more than everyone else, but you were running more than everyone else with time being tacked on to yours arbitrarily. So your time was even faster than what they fucking said it was, and you still goddamn run. And not only that, not only did you run a greater distance in a faster time, but you did that fucker with leg weights on. It was made more difficult for you. You win that race, and you are the biggest swinging dick on earth. Because fuck you, you won this shit. And you won it handedly. Because if it was even approaching fair, you would have completely destroyed fucking everyone. Because everything was stacked against you, and you still won. Now let's look at the possibility of losing with everything stacked against you. Well, of course you lost. Everything was stacked against you. If things were even, you might have won. The person that was declared a winner, they weren't an actual winner. In all likelihood, you would have been able to beat them. They were just placed there because of some superficial bit of bullshit that doesn't fucking matter. So, in this, unlike in the every advantage for you, your every victory is magnified to the nth degree, while every defeat isn't really a defeat. It takes away any pain of defeat and maximizes any thrill in victory. And yes, it is exactly what you're saying, Tyrannus. It is the heart of imposter syndrome. Because when you're in this situation, you can never be sure whether you have made it. If you were in this situation where every advantage was given to you, you don't know if you succeeded. You don't know if you belong. And worse, you know that everyone around you absolutely fucking does belong. Because not only do they belong on an objective scale, they belong beyond that because they succeeded when everything was against them. That's the reason why Asian men and white men are the lowest dropout rates typically. Because when you look at who has the harshest criteria for admission, Asian men have the harshest criteria, followed by white men. When you look at who has the highest dropout rate, it's black women who are the most overrepresented in college admission stats because they get every advantage that's given to women and they get every advantage that's given to black people. Black people get the greatest advantage in the racial category. Women get the greatest advantage in the gender category. And that stacks up. So they can never know whether they actually belong. And then black men, because the racial advantage exceeds the gender advantage, then like I said, it's Hispanic women because they get the same racial advantage as Hispanic men, but they get a added boost for being women. Oh yeah, and this is also, as you just said, Tyrannus, there's a lot of people that are in the workplace and in various positions that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. And worse, a lot of them, they know that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. They know that other people do know what they would be doing. And rather than stepping aside for someone who knows, they try to absolve themselves of that guilt by ensuring that fewer and fewer people know how much they're fucking up. And they do this by pushing for ever greater non-meritorious hires. This is the... Adam, you remember the video that Scribe did ages ago of the one mathematician who doesn't understand math? Her husband wrote her entire fucking doctoral thesis.
I don't think I saw that video. No, is there a way we can watch it here?
I don't think there's a way that we can watch it on stream because we would need Scribe's go-ahead for that. Since it is on his channel. But yeah, he did a video a while ago about this one mathematician who does not know math. She was just kind of swept along. Her husband wrote the most entirety of her thesis. You could tell when it was her husband writing versus when it was her writing in her thesis. And she no longer does mathematics because she didn't understand it. What she now does is she advocates for greater diversity in mathematics.
Oh.
Because what she's trying to do is she's trying to absolve any sort of imposter syndrome by making it so that the people that she's measuring herself against are equally incompetent, because that's really the only solution to imposter syndrome. The only solution to imposter syndrome, other than stepping out of the position where you feel like you don't belong, is surrounding yourself with people that belong less than you do. Well, I say that's the only solution. There is one other solution, which is to do things that demonstrate that you belong. Because if, again, to use a very easy example, if you feel like you have imposter syndrome when it comes to being in the gym and working out with your friends, because you don't feel like you're as strong as them. Well, if you reach a point where you can outbench your friends, that imposter syndrome evaporates.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have the ability to earn your position, or you have the ability to step down from the position that you don't feel like you deserve. Or third, you have the ability to make it so that you're the most qualified of people in that position. And sadly, a lot of people opt for that third, which just degrades the entire position rather than improving themselves.
Well, some people like Russ. Oh, shit.
It just drives me crazy because I see this so fucking often in various positions where people are always advocating for ever lower standards, and it just degrades the position, and it creates more people that feel like they're imposters. Because here's the thing, if people were all held to the same standard, than if you met that standard. And if you know that you met that standard, you would feel the accomplishment of meeting that standard. The reason why people feel imposter syndrome is because they're held to different standards. And due to that, they end up becoming jaded in some situations. They end up becoming broken in others. And that's one of the things. Thomas Sowell has talked about this, where one of the most damaging things that has come out of affirmative action is there's people that are accepted to Harvard that can't meet the rigor of Harvard, or at least the old rigor of Harvard. Harvard has been decreasing its rigor in order to keep people floating around. But when it comes down to it, there's people that could have done a fantastic job at a tier 2 or tier 3 school that get accepted to a tier 1 school and they just can't cut it there. So they drop out and they feel like they've a failure because they dropped out when they were set up to fail. They could have done amazingly at a tier 2 school. They could have done amazingly. They could have felt accomplished. They would have had good grades. They would have received a fantastic education. And what happens is that they receive no fucking education because they were thrown into an environment that they didn't fit in.
Ugh. How does it come to this?
Affirmative action and racist. But I repeat myself.
Jeez.
Because affirmative action is just the racism of lowered expectations. And yeah, exactly. It's just social promotion, and you can't cut it because you didn't earn the position. And there's the counter argument of, but what if someone actually does do well? Well, that's a minority of people. It's a minority of people that, when held to a lower standard, end up actually achieving. And this is the damnable thing about standards. This is the thing that people don't like about standards. When you're held to a lower standard, you live down to the standard. When you're held to a high standard, you strive to achieve the standard. This is a universal thing.
You said it, brother. Dude. Look, I'm playing Soul Calibur 4.
Mm-hmm.
4, I think, right? And it's bringing me back to the first time I played Soul Calibur. Well, it was Soul Blade, and it was an arcade game.
Mm-hmm.
And playing as Siegfried, and dude, it's the same thing. This is why I like this character. This is why I like playing this game.
Yeah, and fighting games are a fantastic, meritorious hierarchy. Because if you are the top in your area at a fighting game, it's because you beat everyone else.
Yep.
You have to actually be good at it in order to be the top at it. This is why video games are fantastic, or at least competitive video games are fantastic, because it is a actual competition. It's a meritorious stack that you can't, well, you could attempt to cheat, but that robs it. Which is why I've said many times that I think that even when we reach a point where physical augmentation is a thing, there's always going to be a demand for unaugmented sports. Because it is this, that's what the human body is capable of when you actually push it. That's what makes sports interesting. That's what makes strongman competitions interesting. And that's why people hate when it turns out that someone took steroids, because that isn't what the human body's capable of just through training and hard work. That's chemical advantage. It's fucked up, and you don't like it. What
Well,
you like
okay,
is
so
when it's
that's the thing.
actual capability.
That's why it should be tiers. Um, and you know,
You
not
want the unadulterated sports than the adulterated sports, effectively.
yeah, like look, I want my American Gladiators where we have souped up fucking uh mutant humans going out there doing their thing, running man type stuff. And then okay, and then you want to have your traditional stuff, go ahead, do it. But I mean,
See, the
I
way
don't
that I
see
view it,
I don't see the reason why they want to combine it all into one in the first place. Like it doesn't need to be that. We already have um like National League and not National League type of thing,
the way I
so
view it
it's
is kind of like F1 versus um, NASCAR.
yeah.
So F1, the part that makes F1 fascinating is every car in F1 is exactly the same in its specs as every other car in F1. It's mandated that the cars are interchangeable effectively. Whereas in
Hmm.
NASCAR, you can have a car that has more power than the other cars racing against it. So when you're watching F1, it is entirely down to driver skill. What car wins? When it comes down to NASCAR, it's still in large part due to the skill of the driver, but there's a non negligible component that is the actual stats of the car.
Hmm.
It Yes, F1 is skill based, and NASCAR is car and skill based. And hello, Harry, how goes?
Oh, how's it going, Harry?
And that's the thing, that if we had augmented sports, it would be a thing of you would have to have a league that, well, you'd probably have a league that's the F1 League of Augmented Sports, where everyone has the exact same augments, and you'd have another league that's a free for all league of augmented sports. See, I disagree, Harry. I think that what makes F1 what F1 is the fact that the cars are interchangeable. that all the cars have the same power. Effectively, like I said, Tyrannus, in F1, the cars are interchangeable. You could take number 6 and swap it for number 9, and it would be the same car for the driver, effectively. Oh yeah, a new league where you had effectively F1 that was NASCAR rules, but it used F1 styling would effectively be the league that you're looking for. That could be interesting. But like I said, the thing that makes F1 F1 is the fact that all the cars are the same, so it comes down to individual driver skill and also to a certain degree the pit crew skill. But because it's skill versus skill.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, in horse racing, that's because what you're really looking at is you're looking at the capabilities of the horse.
And you should
So
never look a gift horse in the mouth.
it would be. It's the horses that you're curious. What is the peak horse performance when you're looking at horse races? The jockey is just there to keep them in line and to make sure that they run when they're supposed to run.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you're dealing with something mechanical, if we had AI drivers for NASCAR, it would be extremely boring. Because the AI driver for NASCAR would effectively result in the same car wins every fucking race. The car with the greatest power wins every time. As it is, it's the car is doing a fair bit of it, but there is still the person's skill. Because a really damn good driver that has balls of steel can win out with a lesser car. But that's what makes that interesting, that it's the testicular fortitude and skill of the driver mixed with the asymmetric cars that are used versus Formula One. It is entirely skill and testicular fortitude because it's symmetric cars. Yeah, you would have some changes where if the most powerful car didn't have the right traction and you had a wet day at the track, then that car would crash. But yeah, that's what is really interesting about sports is the competition, the seeing what a person can do or seeing what an animal can do, because that's what it comes down to in horse racing. It's seeing what a horse can do. And even in sports that people don't like dog fighting, it is still seeing what a dog can do, and cockfighting, it's seeing what a cock can do, and bunch of others. It's seeing what people can actually do, what the capabilities are. And that is a hell of a thing to try to figure out. And Harry, if you're around and you want in, let me know. I can shoot you the link. But yeah, it's That's what makes sports interesting. And it's something that, except for some modern interesting methods, it's difficult to cheat in a good chunk of them. And we try to avoid cheating, and that's why we don't like cheating, because it then takes away from the raw competition of it, and it cheapens the entire endeavor. Because you can no longer look at it and go, oh, this person won because they were stronger, or they were faster, or they were better at what they were doing. It's now, well, this person won because they were less moral. That isn't fun. That's why we don't like steroids, because it exceeds the actual physiological limitations. That's why we don't like when people cheat, because it isn't a level playing field. It isn't interesting. It takes away that aspect.
Yes, indeed. And that's why they should um you know, they want to play that way, do their own thing. But yeah.
Yeah, like I said, if someone wanted to make a roid league where didn't fucking matter, you can take whatever roid you can get your hands on, there'd be some people curious to see what science can do to people, but it would never, to my mind, reach the point that the current sports leagues reach. Though a lot of those are trying to fuck that up by screwing with the rules and taking away the things that make that competition as fair, as equal. Because when you're looking at like women's sports, where now suddenly they're allowing people that aren't biologically female into female sports, which is an advantage. And that's going to continue until it fucking kills a woman.
Well, shit. Hopefully it doesn't.
Oh, it's going to. There's no doubt about it. We've already had women who have been severely injured. There was the college, was it a college or high school volleyball player just earlier this year, had a concussion and broke a bone from receiving a spike from a trans player. That's shit that doesn't happen when you have male players spiking against male players, or female players spiking against female players. But the size and strength differential was so great that they received a concussion and they broke a bone from getting hit by a spike. You have in combat sports Phelan Fox, who broke ridiculous number of bones in their female competitors because there was a size and strength differential. The ones that I always bring up because it's hilarious and fascinating at the same time is, do you remember when there were a shit ton of people that were getting pissed off because people would say that Serena and Venus Williams were the best female tennis players, and they'd go, why is everyone always saying that they're the best female tennis players rather than just the best tennis players? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, there was actually I believe a tweet that was brought up, and they brought that up where they even said we wouldn't be able to beat them.
Oh yeah, when it came to, there was an exhibition match that was done ages ago, where it was the two Williams sisters versus a guy back to back. Care to guess what ranking the guy was?
What's that?
If I remember correctly, at the highest he was 140th, and I think he was 240th placed male player in the world. Do you know what the result was?
What was that?
He played the Venus Sisters back to back and he smoked them. He beat them like redheaded stepchildren. It was absolutely ridiculous. The fact that it was treated as if it didn't happen by a lot of people is infuriating. Because it should have been something that everyone went, yeah. Yep, just like the World Championship women's soccer team is routinely beaten by teenage boys. And the same thing with a bunch of other professional women's teams. A lot of them practice against males' high school teams. And most of them are really happy if they can pull out an even win-loss against high school men's teams.
Right.
Do you have a topic that you'd prefer to go to, Adam? We've kind of gone off into the weeds on sports.
No, actually, I think, to be honest, we've been going for about an hour and a half. So I don't know.
Well, there's still a couple interesting things in news. Let me quickly shoot this off one moment. Because, like I said, there was the Twitter files, which we talked about earlier, and all the blowback from that shit. Then there was the bullshit going on with the Democrats trying to sneak through a bunch of bills before the new House comes in. There's the rhinos trying to help the Democrats sneak through a bunch of bills. The fucking border still being in a wreck and becoming worse with the health requirement being stripped away.
Well, you know what, dude? All this stuff sounds like a wonderful thing to talk about on another night. I'm gonna have to pass, dude. I mean,
You're reaching the point where you feel fairly beat?
Well, I mean, you had these things to talk about. We should have talked about them. But we're an hour and a half in. We haven't talked about any of them. So, I mean.
Well, we talked about the Twitter files and got into the discussion of the federal government and what we thought should happen there, and then started talking about competition and fairness, and ended up going into the rather long sports talk, or rather as college admissions into the competition and fairness.
Yeah, we kind of spiraled off on on a topic. But yeah, no,
meritocratic competition. And looks like Harry has been able to join us. Hello, Harry.
Howdy, weebs.
Okay.
Well, you can enjoy your chat with Harry if you'd like. But
You passing
as
the
Going to
for
call it
baton?
a
me,
night.
yep, there you go. I'm
All right.
tagging you in, Harry.
Good night, Adam.
You
Yeah,
have a good night, Adam. Thanks for being on.
So I know basically nothing about sports.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time when I was going to university when I needed to make money because I
Mhm.
was neither black nor female.
Yep.
So I had to actually pay my way. And so in order to make money, I did work in a place where drinking and sports occasionally happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just have to try to fake it. I got really good at faking it and knowing when to
Mhm.
walk away and pretend not to hear stuff. So I know basically nothing about sports, but I do know a little bit about this soccer thing. Are you familiar with the current revenue sharing arrangement that the women and men's World Cup teams have going on?
It's effectively, with the current setup, the men are paying the women for the women not playing a fucking moment of the game.
Well, that's a way of phrasing it, but essentially they're pooling all of the winnings and then splitting them evenly, regardless
Yep.
of how either team performed. So, like you said, the women
Okay.
could just stay home and knit doilies or whatever angry lesbian soccer players do,
Yep.
and take half of the men's earnings home with them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm perfectly happy just letting the market sort it out.
Sounds a lot like marriage, that.
Yeah, a lot like, except without the fringe benefits.
So it's a lot like a marriage that's been going on for a while.
It's a lot like a marriage where bed death has crept in, and it's basically just bickering roommates who
Yep.
don't want to do paperwork to get rid of each other.
Exactly.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was kind of appalled by that, but you had some news items you wanted to talk about.
Oh, like I said, there's all kinds of interesting shit that's been happening. We talked about the Twitter files a little bit earlier and how people are still trying to deny that anything fishy is there.
Oh, just out of
Despite
curiosity, is my audio okay or am I too hot? Am I fine?
you're coming in decent from everything I'm hearing. If anyone
okay.
in chat has anything to
'Cause
say different about that,
I've
let us
been
know.
I've been fighting with audio problems on and off, and if my mic is too hot, I can turn it down.
Fair enough. Yeah, as I talked about earlier in the stream, I've had a fair bit of
Thank you.
electronic and tech issue recently, considering I came back from my early holidays,
Mm-hmm.
found out that the cold had completely killed my car's battery.
Lead acid?
I believe so, not 100%, but
Yeah. Well, they hold up better than some, but usually the cold won't kill your battery so much as take a battery that's getting a little long in the tooth and drop its performance by about 50%, which is indistinguishable from it being dead when you go to turn it over.
yep. Yeah, I
Yeah.
tried jumping it when I realized that it was dead and couldn't get it to turn, so I need to swap the battery now, unfortunately. Which is
I
a bit of a
actually,
pain in the ass.
in my motorcycle, I swapped out my the lead acid battery for a lithium iron phosphate battery, which are the lithium
Okay.
batteries that don't burst into flames.
Yep.
And the reason I did this was because it doesn't self-discharge as rapidly as some other chemistries.
Oh, okay.
So if the weather's just shitty and I don't ride it for a month, which is not normal, but if I were to just not ride it for a month, as long as I leave the alarm disconnected, I'll come back to a bike that'll turn over.
Very nice.
Not only that, it has a circuit built in that if it gets too low, it will automatically disconnect. And there's a way of basically applying a little bit of voltage to it to get it to come back to life. So it has like a built-in reserve capacity.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, it's a little more expensive, but it chops a bunch of pounds off the bike, which if you were racing, you'd care about. But lead acid batteries for cars are probably for too many more years going to become a thing of the past because they're big and they're clunky and they kind of don't work very well.
Yeah. Thankfully, I was able to figure out in my attempt to jump my car that it's just the starter battery and not the main battery. Like I said, I have a hybrid. So that's the difference between $100-something fix and a hundreds of dollar fix.
Yeah, I've kind of thought that a hybrid in some ways used to make a lot of sense to me because
Mhm.
it was you'd get all the advantages of an electric without the disadvantages of range, right?
Mm-hmm.
But another way of looking at it is you get all of the disadvantages of an electric car with all of the disadvantages of a gasoline car. Because you still have to get oil changes, you still have to deal with spark plugs, you still have to deal with cooling systems. I mean, you go through the whole list of things. So basically, you need mechanics that know how to deal with the gasoline part and people who know how to work with the electrical part. And no matter which way you look at it, you're still going into the shop all the time to deal with, bullshit.
To a certain degree, but then also a lot of hybrids like mine are apparently some of the longest wearing cars on the market currently.
So you have a Prius.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's a solid car. I actually know some people that are on their third Prius now. But I live in California, so
Yep.
early adopters and stuff like that.
Yeah. I don't have any complaints until it reaches something like this, but this is a problem that would be the case for any car. Especially since where I've been, it's been down in the negative, like 20, or about -4 to -20 has been the temperature for a good chunk of the past week.
Yeah,
And since I
anything
was
electric
gone, I wasn't
hates that temperature.
driving.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. That's pretty terrible. Anyway, I didn't mean to derail your show.
Not a problem at all.
Let's go on with the news.
But yeah, there was the Twitter shit that we talked about a bit earlier, where people are still trying to pretend that the FBI didn't do anything, including the FBI is trying to pretend that the FBI didn't do anything, while also trying to chastise the guy who was a former Fed and then was trying to censor a lot of the Twitter information.
So are we talking about Release 8, or are you referring back to the earlier ones? Because I'm not really familiar with the most recent one from, what was it, today or yesterday?
I haven't read the most recent one yet. I'm referring to the chain that has come out up to this one, effectively, where there's still, after finding out that the one dude who was former FBI has been trying to censor the releases, after finding out all of the information about, the FBI contacted social media companies and was telling them to avoid allowing certain bits of information out. The FBI has been trying to say, well, yeah, we were just advising. We didn't tell them not to do it. We were just advising. It was perfectly fine, perfectly above board. What are you looking at? Don't worry about it. It's fine. And
Yeah.
we didn't do anything.
No, we did. Yeah, the didn't do thing. But I mean, in all seriousness, not to get super serious, but a little bit serious. If you think about email, you don't particularly like getting spam, right? I mean, it's not that you don't want to receive the email you want to receive, but you don't like to get spam. So as long as the spam filter works the way you want it to, people generally don't care about the fact that they're not receiving a bunch of spam. And as somebody who's run these systems since the beginning, I can tell you that the amount of spam that people get dwarfs the amount of mail that you get by a lot. Mm-hmm. In many cases, it's like an order of magnitude or more. There's like way more mail comes in that's spam than not if your address is anywhere published on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that some purists would say, well, I don't want some company deciding what mail I get to see or not see. No, you actually pay them to remove the bullshit. Mm-hmm. So if you have a social media site and you've got bad actors that are posting bullshit, as a consumer, as somebody using a product, you might not want to get that bullshit, or you might want to have it be flagged. But what you don't want is for the government to come in and decide what's bullshit for you. Especially when you're wondering, like, I don't know why I haven't heard from this person in a while. Well, maybe it's because they're guilty of wrongthink. You know, they haven't broken any laws, but the government has non-judicially decided that their speech is no longer supposed to be heard. Or heard by so few people that it basically makes them lose the will to dissent. That's wrong.
And that was one of the things that came out very early in the Twitter files, where it turned out that a bunch of people were being leaned on for saying the wrong thing, which a great many of them were saying the right thing just at the wrong time.
The FBI has no standing in this sort of thing. The only way the FBI would have standing in this kind of situation, in my mind, is not even the disinformation, which is just a word for facts that are wrong or people that are lying. People spread disinformation all the time when they say laundry detergent is new and improved, but it's the same old crappy laundry detergent. I mean, that's technically disinformation.
77 cents on the dollar.
Exactly. And as long as people are allowed to declare bullshit on it, I sort of don't care. If it's the thing that Elon is actually concerned with, and this is the same thing I've been mentioning to people who talk about, oh, well, it should be legal to photograph somebody in public, for instance. And I say, well, yeah, that's true. If you're like in a public square and somebody's walking around taking photographs, you're in public, you have no expectation of privacy. Yep. But suppose you had, an above average, good looking 15-year-old daughter who goes out and goes shopping at the mall and does that stuff. And somebody just had like a drone that followed her around, taking pictures of her and then giving her geolocation information, including, who's with her and when she's vulnerable, using some kind of API. So insofar as you can use something like Twitter as a mechanism to commit a crime, you could say that there is some justifiable communication between the FBI and Twitter. But none of this falls in that category, because they're not even trying to say that that's what they were doing. They're not even trying to give an alternate explanation for the reasonable things they're doing. They're just doubling down and either saying, A, we didn't do it, or we were just doing our job, shut up and bend over and take it.
Yeah,
that's what amazes me.
It would have been one thing if it turned out that most of their communications were, hey, we found out that there's a Chomo ring. We need you to send us any information that is linked to this, and also make sure that people don't randomly find this. Make it so that it has to be shared directly, and then let us know whoever it's shared with and shared by.
I'll get right on that as soon as you send me a court order.
Yep, and that should be the response. But that wasn't what it was, which is the part that should get everyone going, the fuck is going on? But so many people are studiously ignorant.
Yeah, our hypothetical excuses for them are better than the FBI's actual excuses that they're trying to put out. You or I can come up with better reasons for them talking, than they are.
Yep.
What's amazing to me is that sort of people don't care. Also, the other weird thing about Twitter is this notion that somehow Elon Musk, being the guy with his thumb on the scale, it's not right for one person to have the thumb on the scale. Versus, say, a dozen ideologues who are in lock-sync with each other? How is one guy's thumb on the scale different than 12 people's thumb on the scale?
Yep. And especially when you find out all the shit that they were doing.
Yeah.
Not to say that Jack Dorsey was at all clean, because there's a lot of information saying he wasn't. But
seems like he was cleaner. I feel like he was almost I feel like he was being held captive by his own company in some ways.
Yeah, he was cleaner than a lot of the other people involved. He still did a lot of shit that he shouldn't have, which came out in some of the later documents, that he was doing some fucked up shit as well, but he was cleaner than the rest of them by a damn sight. And
what's his early background?
I think he was just a tech nerd and went with it. Let me quickly check.
That's what I believe too, because I can tell you that I can't say for sure that this is the deal with Jack Dorsey, but I can give you a little bit of insight into what I think's probably going on, which is that Jack Dorsey was a guy who started out as kind of an insecure nerd. There's a time when what he did was not cool. And he probably spent a lot of his early life not being the popular kid. And then he found himself in a place where he had influence and money, and he surrounded himself with all these people. And I suspect he did a lot of things to want to compensate for that little insecure voice in the back of his head, because he'd found something that he never thought he'd have in his life: money, independence, a source of confidence, and a cadre of people who looked up to him. You don't think that even if he personally disagreed with stuff, that he was going to go against that lightly, when he had a lot of the Alan Poe type people in the world there to kind of keep an eye on him. I almost look at him like it's a Stockholm syndrome kind of thing, because he seems like he might be basically a decent guy.
And I've said this when it comes to businesses before. What I think is the big issue with businesses currently is that they have been captured by the HR department.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to a lot of the CEOs, I don't think that the CEOs believe a goddamn thing that they're saying. They're being told by their advisor, who was hired by the HR department, that this is the way to improve their company. And then eventually they cop wise and they start going, okay, this person doesn't know what the fuck they're saying. Every time I do what they tell me I should be doing, I lose money. And then they sack that advisor. And when they sack their advisor, the next advisor is also hired by the HR department and tells them more of the same shit that they were hearing before, which then gets them in more trouble. The problem is that every time they're getting it by the HR department, and the HR department doesn't actually give a shit if the company survives. What they care about is if what they think should be said is being said.
There's a group of these people, these sort of gender study type people, who basically just jerk each other off and get each other jobs. And they know that they're more interested in getting favors from other people in the broader HR community than they, and ESG and that sort of thing, than they are in the company that they actually work for.
Yeah.
Because they know that if they jerk enough people off, that they will have a soft landing somewhere else when the company they're with goes under. The organism that they're supposed to be taking care of is the company, but they have a conflict of interest that supersedes that in nearly every case I've seen.
Yep, the way that I phrase it is that they're placed too high up in the company to give a shit about what's actually happening on the ground. They don't know anyone that is working at the ground level. They don't know how they do anything that happens at the ground level. They don't give a shit because it doesn't affect them. But they're also too lowly placed to actually give a shit if the company survives their time there.
Yeah.
So if the company dies the day after they turn in their resignation or their retirement, they're perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
Because
works for me.
They aren't bought into the company in the same way that the higher ups are. Because most higher ups, they do care if the company survives, since a good chunk of their retirement is tied up in how much the company has improved under their time and how long it survives after their time. Whereas these people are too low and too high, so they don't give a shit from either end of it.
Yeah. So what was the other news that you wanted to talk about?
Well, then there's also the Democrats trying to sneak in a bunch of interesting bills before they lose control of the House officially.
Talking about the inside the omnibus thing, or are you talking separate legislation?
Inside the omnibus is where most of it is, though I think there were a few bills that were outside of that. Some of them were put forward by rhinos, including some interesting immigration bills, where they're trying to sneak in a bunch of happy horse shit when it comes to the southern border. Like, there's a bill that's supposedly to increase immigration funding. And not a single penny of the increase is allowed to be spent on securing the border.
No. We just want to relocate people with better seat cushions in the buses.
Yep.
Yep.
Which is all kinds of bullshit, and I hope that it doesn't actually go through, but like I said, given the fact that it's a bunch of rhinos and the Democrats, I'm not going to be overly surprised if it does end up going through, which would be miserable since nothing is as permanent as a temporary government act.
Yeah. Well, I think Scott Adams had an interesting take, well, interesting to me, take on the immigration situation. And I think the part he thought was particularly interesting was the regret that some of the Democrats are starting to have as they realize that the people that are coming across the border are hardworking, religious, family-oriented people that really don't want to have anything to do with most of the stuff that the Democrats are selling. I think in their minds they thought, oh, well, we're just going to bring in a whole bunch of people who will thank us for letting them in, and then we'll have like this block of voters that will vote for us until they're dead. And we'll make a whole bunch of our friends rich, and then they'll, throw some back to the big guy, and it'll be great. It's like when a dog throws up and says, look, I'm magic, I just made food. That's their contribution to the economy. They don't really produce anything. They don't really create anything. But they get rich being in government somehow. Anyway, so they're going to do that. Anytime a bunch of money's moving around, you have to wonder how much of it's going to spill onto the floor for them to pick up. 10% for the big guy, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Anybody who thinks it's just Joe, it's like, how do you think these people get so rich being in office? They don't make that much money on a government salary, yet they end up being incredibly rich.
Nancy Pelosi with her 65% return on investment. Which, for those who don't know, Warren Buffett, widely recognized as the investing genius because he has a return on investment of, 25 or 30 something percent?
You talking about Berkshire Hathaway shares?
I believe so.
If you're talking about Warren Buffett in terms of public information, his company is Berkshire Hathaway, and to get into him being your portfolio guy, you basically buy shares of Berkshire Hathaway. And you get a good return. It's not a cheap thing to buy into. I can't remember what a single share of it costs. That's their way of having no riffraff. So you can't just go in and buy like 1/100th of a share of Berkshire Hathaway. Anyway, be that as it may, no, that's a ridiculous rate of return. It's almost like they had some sort of inside information that allowed them to make better deals, at least. And sometimes that information stuff they run into in part of their government job, and other times it's something that's given to them as a means of currying favor. Like Hillary Clinton is one of the most successful commodities traders of all time. She managed to make like 1,000-something% return in a very short amount of time trading commodities. That is a thing that just does not happen. But she had the right people in her court.
And it's infuriating because it's shit that is so naked with how it's being done. And there's a bunch of people with ideas of how to fix the problem, but part of it is just our current political class, because one of the things is that there's the idea of, well, if we increased the pay of our government officials, then we can make it so that they wouldn't need to be corrupt in order to feel like they're making a decent amount, which decreases the chance of corruption. But that only works when you don't have the current political class that we have. Because
that only works if you do other things in addition to it. You can't do just that one thing.
Exactly. We'd have to get rid of the current political class because they would just go, oh, sweet, more money. And continue doing all their corrupt shit. what you'd need to do is you'd need to do that and deal with a load of other shit in order to get it to work out right. Like, one of the things is I hate the idea that, well, anyone that becomes a representative or a senator, they need to have 2 houses. No. They shouldn't live in Washington. Washington should be they go there when they need to go there, and then they get the fuck out of there whenever they can. Because if you have a representative and they live in Washington, D.C., they aren't your representative. They don't know you. They don't give a shit about you.
Well, they spend so much time there that they basically need a second residence. Now, whether they have a second home, that's a whole nother question. Their primary domicile should be in the district they represent, but they are going to be spending a lot of time in D.C. So having a second residence just kind of makes sense. I do think that when you look at the kind of people that you would want to have doing that job, and you look at what those people make in the private sector, it's unreasonable to think that you're going to get the best people for the job at what the current salary is. So I do think that their financial records should be open. Any investments they have should be placed in a blind trust, and somebody else should basically manage their portfolio for them insofar as such a thing is possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of sunlight that would do a lot of good here. But I do think that paying them significantly more than they make right now probably makes sense, because I can tell you that I know plenty of people that would be really good at this sort of thing. And unless they're independently wealthy, they literally can't afford to take that job. You have to either be wealthy or corrupt. Because right now we've got like 3 congressmen, sharing a townhouse, with one guy sleeping on the sofa. In order to make ends meet. It's actually pretty rough when you look at what it costs there. I'm sympathetic to the argument of giving them more money, but I also think we need to keep them from being quite so damn corrupt.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that should be done is the idea that, well, they spend so much time there that they need to have a residence. Let's be honest, how much work they're actually doing when they're spending it there. Fuck all.
There's
there's
actually a ton of work they should be doing, though, don't you think?
I agree. There's a ton of work that they should be doing. None of it's getting done.
I don't know how hard that job is. I would think that it's actually a pretty large amount of work. If you look at people who exchange email, right? People on email or online on Twitter and stuff can just be assholes. When you talk to somebody on the phone, you're less likely to be, I mean, you meaning humans, not you in particular, but people in general, and this is statistically holds up.
Bastard on a phone.
People tend to be better on the phone than they are in email, and they tend to be yet more civil in person than they are remotely. So as much as I kind of like the idea of just making them Zoom call in to do the votes and have the discussions and stuff, I think that might actually end up being terrible in practice.
Oh, see, for the actual votes, yes, that should be in person. For the actual discussions, yes, that should be in person. The idea that you constantly need to be there, I think, is ridiculous. Because there's a lot of it that could be done by talking when there, and then continuing conversation, because they live all over the fucking, or at least they should live all over the fucking place. So talk to the ones nearby. You have to go someplace for something else. Talk to the local senator while you're there. Talk to the local representative while you're there. And do your meetings that way. I would prefer that to, we're all just going to live in Washington, D.C., because what happens is that they become representatives of Washington, D.C., rather than representatives of where they're actually from, the people that actually elected them.
Right.
And that is where a lot of the problem comes from, in my opinion. Because it's kind of like if all of them were representatives of LA.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't the country. That's a very specific area with very specific problems. That if they all become part of that area, they get those problems that they take more seriously than other problems that don't fucking affect most of the country.
I think having them spend more time in their home districts meeting with their constituents would be unambiguously a good thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
However, there's always a however. I agree with you about that part, but I don't think it solves the pay problem. Because whether you spend 9 months a year in Washington or 10 months or 11, it doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things. It still just fiscally makes sense to have a second residence. It doesn't have to be an estate, but you just need someplace that you can put all your identical blue or red ties and press shirts and that sort of stuff. It's just
my
keeps you
ideal
from wasting a
situation
lot
would
of time.
be effectively a congressional barracks.
Well, yeah, we could have a congressional barracks. That would solve some of the problems. But it's like what's the French idea of a pied de terre? It's your place that you keep in the city for when you go to the city, but normally you live in the country. That's sort of the healthy way to do it. I mean, I effectively keep 2 residences for much the same reason, so I might have a slightly different perspective on this than you do.
Potentially, but
at
the same time, to me, it's when you're talking about, well, they have to live in the area, it's one of the most expensive areas in the entire country.
Oh,
That's
it's ridiculous.
A lot of the, well, they don't make anywhere near as much as they need to, comes from, because people are looking at, well, they need to be able to afford a residence. And in order to afford being the third on a 2-bedroom apartment, you have to work and make $50,000 a year, which that's fucking ridiculous for the third on a 2-bedroom apartment.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because that area is just ridiculously expensive. I think that it would be, like you said, unequivocal good, spending more time in their home area. I think there's a lot of areas that they could do their work in without having to constantly be in DC. I would be really in favor of a congressional barracks or a series of congressional barracks, because that would take away the need for their home. Shit, slap that in one of the bases in the area, and now you have their security detail is already accounted for effectively. Makes that much more efficient.
So if they're in town, I mean, what would be you're probably familiar with how the government pays for stuff when they go out and buy things, like the GSA schedule.
Per diem.
Yeah. So forget per diem. Suppose they just, as they left the office, I'm not going home today, going to miss my flight after work late. They just grab a voucher and then they take that to the Watergate Hotel or whatever.
Yep.
Hand it to them at the desk, and if there's available room, they just bill it back to the government at the government rate.
Yep.
And then the person doesn't have to pay for that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really no different than them taking cars and whatever. And as much as I'd like to just be cheap with them, I still think that if you want to get good talent, you're going to have to pay upwards of $275, $300 to get good people. Anybody who's got the skills to be a really good congressman can make so much more money. Really, the only people, like I said, the only people who can afford to be congressmen right now are corrupt people and people who are already rich.
Also, people that live extremely Spartan lives. Those
people are few and far between. We're not going to find enough of them that are competent and stoic.
That's what I'm saying.
That want to live a monastic existence as a government servant. There just aren't that many of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. To which you're like, want to bet? And then it's like, oh, Sanguine for Congress 2024. No. I'm not trying to present it as a challenge to you.
But yeah, it's one of those things that there's solutions that could be put forward,
Yeah.
but so many people stop with one solution where it's, well, we need to pay them more.
No.
Just like everything, it comes down to, okay, let's look at the cost benefit of this, and let's look at the efficiency at which the money is being used.
Yeah, in the big scheme of things, it just doesn't matter if you pay them 175 or 275 or even 375. In the big scheme of things, them being the right people doing the work at high quality is so much more important to the country than whatever, they're not going to get rich off of any of that stuff. The main thing is we just need absolute financial transparency. Now, if you've got people who are family members who have encumbrances, it gets really messy because then we have to talk about, well, okay, what kind of separation needs to exist? Like, do we make it literally a crime for them to discuss business with their family members? Because that's what we would have to do. We'd have to put some real teeth into it, and it can't just be them, their ethics committees, policing themselves,
Intranational League of Nations.
Yeah, that's not going to work. Anyway, what else you got? What else is on your list?
Those were the biggest ones, and then it was just general bits of bullshit. But it is reaching the point where it's now been going for 2 hours and 15 minutes. So, do you have any
not for me?
True.
Well, let's see. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with tomorrow night in terms of what the show should look like, and I kind of agonized over it. I thought about Skep actually volunteered to take it from me, and I thought about that. And as time's gone on, it's like no. We'll do a proper show, but we'll keep it pretty light. So I think tomorrow is going to be hopefully a little less structured because I don't want people to show up and feel like I'm making them do work on Christmas Eve. So we'll have a hangout tomorrow, and there'll be a little bit of serious stuff.
Accused of being Scrooge?
Yeah, I don't want to be Scrooge. Well, Scrooge McDuck. I like the part where you get to swim around in money, but no.
I don't know. Diving into gold sounds like it would hurt.
It probably would. It would look a lot better than it would feel.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, with all due respect to Auric Goldfinger, and who was it? It was Shirley Eaton that they spray painted gold for that Bond movie, wasn't it?
I believe so.
I have trouble remembering people's names, but the woman that they spray painted gold in the Bond movie, I got that one down. I got that one down. No, tomorrow should be interesting. We're gonna do some Christmassy stuff. It's it should be a lot of fun. I think we'll have a lot of the regular folks that are on Saturday, and who knows, maybe we'll get a few extra guests on. But yeah, we'll have a what should be a pretty decent Saturday show tomorrow, I hope. I don't want to build it up too much in case I suck and none of it works. Hosting's hard work sometimes.
Oh yeah, especially
you gotta,
when
make plans and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So no, there's nothing I need to discuss right now because if I do, I'm going to start going into my plans for tomorrow, and then that's just eating my seed corn.
Johnny's wondering if you've already scheduled Sora for the evening.
I hope so. She actually had a tree fall near her, which took out her power.
Ouch.
So assuming that weather doesn't get in the way, I believe Sora will be there.
Very nice.
But you never really know. People get migraines at the last minute and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, my hope is that Sora will be there. A bunch of other people have all tentatively said that they're going to be there. I can tell you if nobody shows up, I'm just going to play Tom Lehrer songs and show pictures of dogs wearing Santa hats, and that's going to be it. Because I'm not going to just sit there and talk by myself for 2 hours.
Nice.
Whatever happens, it'll be fun.
I'm probably going to see if this year, just given how work has been, I probably won't be able to do my normal pop-in on the Christmas stream. But what I might see if I can do is record a Christmas Carol for, I believe it's Inquisitor on Sunday night, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll see if I can record a Christmas Carol and send the file to Inquisitor. That way he can decide if he wants to play it at some point during the night.
No, that sounds good. Yeah. So that's
Hell,
it
if
for
you
me
wanted
tonight.
one, you could let me know and I could shoot you one as well.
Well, if I was gonna, I would need to figure out how that fits in with the overall picture.
True.
Yeah, but I don't want to give away too much of what I've got planned. I want it to be
Fair
a
enough.
surprise. So
So
yes, so Johnny, Sora should be there, but I can't promise because I don't think even Sora can promise. Things happen. You'd be surprised how many times people get added and removed 30 minutes before showtime. It's just
yeah,
a thing that
constantly.
happens. So I can't promise, but I can tell you I'm 99% sure she's going to be there tomorrow.
So do you want to go through your parting words then?
I have no parting words. Just Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, peace on Earth. Sorry I don't get to hang out with you very much. My schedule usually does not allow for Fridays at all.
Not a problem at all. It's good being able to chat with you again, though.
Hey, no problem.
And I'll sign off with my standard of, if you're passionate about something, make sure that you devour it. Don't let it devour you. And with that, have a good night, all. The zoo is closed.
Good night.
And now, just to click this and see how long